So I really wanted this to be Disney's answer to Pirates of the Caribbean. And with the PG-13 rating, the budget of over 150 million, which is perhaps a little higher than it should have been, but the hope was there. Even the posters for this film looked promising. Plus, the 2003 film has gained a cult following, myself included, because it counted as our first introduction to horror through Disney. And watching it as an adult really channeled that nostalgia. That's why those of us who still have cable watch it every time Freeform includes it on their 31 Nights of Halloween marathon or own the DVD/Blu-ray, because owning physical media of films that have impacted you is something I consider to be quite important. So the real question was, can Disney capture lightning in a bottle 20 years later? Hello, everyone, and welcome back to For the Agenda. If you're new here, welcome. My name is Huang, and on this channel, I essentially watch mainstream content and let you know if it's worth your time, because your time is valuable and no one should tell you otherwise. So today I'm going to be talking about Disney's Haunted Mansion, which is directed by Justin Simien, and many of you have probably seen the 2003 version starring Eddie Murphy, and this is not a sequel to it. This is not a redo. This is a new version of Haunted Mansion, which is channeling more of the Disney park ride. Now, in this film, a woman and her son enlist a motley crew of so-called spiritual experts to help rid their home of supernatural squatters. Now, with this film, I try to go into it as blind as possible. At most, maybe see one trailer, and that's at most. Now, I have a little bit of background information on this film, which I found fascinating while doing my research for it. So, plans for this film actually started in 2010. Yes, they've been trying to make a Haunted Mansion film since 2010. And at that time, Guillermo del Toro was attached to write and produce it, which, what a film that could have been. I mean, if you've seen Crimson Peak, you know that would have been exquisite. I mean, the gothic horror that he would have created, it just feels unreal. That, I think, would have been a really great version of Haunted Mansion. Apparently, his version would have taken place in a heightened reality rather than the real world, which could have been cool, and it was apparently going to be family friendly while still living up to the thrills of the ride, but he left the project. None of this is a rumor. I found this on a specific article that details the entire timeline of this getting to this movie, which I will leave in the description in case you want to check it out for yourselves. I'm giving you the summarized version. Now, apparently, Disney wanted him to direct the film, but he apparently didn't want to commit until he was done with Pacific Rim. And guess who was attached to star in this film in 2015? Ken himself, Ryan Gosling. Again, the timeline for this film is really interesting. So after years of being in basically developmental purgatory, if you will, this was officially announced in August of 2020, and this was filmed from October 2021 to February 2022, and here we are in 2023 discussing it. Now, this does feel like a film you see on a streaming service and go, maybe that could have played in theaters, and you're like, but it is playing in theaters. Well, the problem is that it was released during the wrong time. Obviously, the reason for that being is so that it can be released on time for DisneyPlus for the Halloween season, which is going to be great for the viewing numbers. This could do big business on the service if promoted correctly. Maybe not Hocus Pocus 2 numbers, but still a relatively big deal. And what's interesting is the 2003 film had a similar dilemma, coming out in November instead of October. Had this released in October, it maybe could have done better at the box office, because who doesn't want to see a scary movie during the Halloween season, even if it's family friendly? Even though I feel that the minute Leo season ends, it's officially fall and spooky season has begun. And on top of that, the movie comes out a week after Barbenheimer basically explodes in theaters and does incredible business. Was maybe not the smartest of moves, but hey, I understand what they were trying to do. They got it in theaters, it does how it does, and then it goes to Disney Plus and VOD. I'm going to tell you as of right now, I do think that this film is entertaining, and I had a pretty good time with it. However, I don't know if it's to the degree that I wanted it to be, yet I would probably still recommend you check it out, and here's why. While this film is quite dark and it touches on some themes you wouldn't expect in a Disney film, it talks about grief, loss, and how one can deal with life's hardships. It has some very moving moments where you can kind of see the Disney magic, even some horror-inspired moments where you go, if I saw this as a kid, I'd probably love this as an introduction to horror through Disney. I thought the ghosts, they looked cool. The VFX were quite good, although I think I would have liked it more if they used a little more prosthetic and practical makeup to create the ghosts and the effects they had throughout, which again is something the 2003 version did quite well. And the production design, that was also really cool. The mansion itself was incredibly well realized, very elegant yet haunting. You do explore the building and you can see how it's very much a tribute to older black and white horror films that used to really take advantage of the atmospheric mansion setting. It felt like a maze, and you wanted to explore every corner because you didn't know what lied on the other side, but you were intrigued to find out. And I like that world building element quite a bit. To be honest, if you told me Disney was going to recreate this mansion at their theme park for the Halloween season, I think it'd be a very smart idea. I think fans of the attraction are going to really like this film because you can tell that they wanted to do the ride justice. The story itself, while it's not perfect, I think it has some clever moments. I thought the pacing had some issues at times, for sure. For example, how they got the characters to come back to the mansion. I thought that was clever. I also liked that the backstories of the house and the ghosts in the house. I thought it felt very much like hearing a ghost story when you're younger. I thought that element was pretty cool. However, one of my main issues with this film is that while I appreciate how it deals with its sad subject matter, I do think that it needed some more fun elements to kind of balance it out, not keep that somber tone. I think you need to let the ghosts cause some funnier mischief, like I don't know, play a catchy song on the piano at night while everyone's asleep. It needed to find that balance of sad and serious and fun and whimsical. Not all hauntings have to be portrayed from a negative aspect within a film. It can be fun and it could be campy. And had they had a little bit more of that in this film, I think it would have actually helped quite a bit, especially when it comes to recreating that Disney magic. Another issue is maybe the film could have been shorter. 2 hours when you're in the Halloween mood, that's fine. But in this case, I think making it shorter would have probably helped. Maybe like 15 minutes shorter. Now, the product placement in this film, it's a lot. I laughed at a couple of them, of course. But at one point, you might be like, did we have to mention that here in this scene? That for me maybe was a little too much. However, I will say this is a star-studded cast. And one of the people who really shine the most is Lakeith Stanfield. He does a fantastic job as our lead. He's very talented and very funny. I liked his story arc, and his romance within the film. You really got to root for him as a character. And I think that's great. He's great as an actor at keeping you invested within the film he's starring in. And he brings that same energy here. I do appreciate that. And someone else who really shines, Danny DeVito, our short king. He steals the show. He was hilarious and he looked like he was having a blast. Out of everyone, I think he was having the most fun time. And his character brings that zany energy where you go, yes, let's include a little bit more of that energy in this film. And I think it would have been excellent. I also really like Jamie Lee Curtis. I liked her Madame Leota quite a bit, even though she didn't have the biggest role. I think the Jennifer Tilly version of the character had a bit more of an impact. But I will say Jamie Lee Curtis does a really good job. She's quite funny and she does the role justice. Owen Wilson, however, should have been allowed to improv or something because there's no way these were the funniest takes that made the final cut. And the guy can be very funny. And here, his jokes fall flat. And I'm like, Owen Wilson, his jokes falling flat and not in a satire way like he did with Paint? Something's off here. I don't think those were the best versions of his jokes that made the final cut. But he was all right. I just think his jokes needed to be funnier. Someone else who I think deserves a shout out, Hassan Minhaj, who has a short scene in this film. You basically see it in the trailer, but it still got me. I think he's so funny. I think he's so talented. I would have liked to have seen him be integrated into the main cast. I think he would have done a really great job. And his scene alone, it does become a highlight of your experience. I think it's just so good. Rosario Dawson was good. She sells her moments because, she's Rosario Dawson. But a character doesn't have that much to do. And you kind of wish she did because she would have been game to do some cool stuff. I think her character, again, it works within the context of the film. But I do wish you would have let her get in on the hauntings. You just felt like her character, they could have done more with her. Tiffany Haddish, she was Tiffany Haddish, and some of her lines are pretty funny. Again, she has a nice moment discussing death, which I did like. I definitely think it was a highlight. I know not everyone's a fan of Tiffany Haddish. If you are, you're going to like what she does here. and she does a good job in the role and making it funny. Now, the Hatbox Ghost, he was a really good character who was pretty well realized. However, I do think Jared Leto's involvement does bring this down. You may not even have known that was Jared Leto in the film, which on the one hand is a credit to the characterization because it's not mentioned. You do not know who that is. I actually told that to two people and they were like, he's in the film? I didn't know he was in the film, which that means they did a great job making the character look scary and not look like Jared Leto at all. But yeah, that is Jared Leto. And overall, Disney fans are going to enjoy this film. This just arrived to DisneyPlus for the spooky season, and I feel this is going to be a great stream. You get your popcorn, a fizzy soda, a cozy blanket, and you turn off your brain for 2 hours. This is 100% going to be great for a weekend stream where you're trying to have these Halloween movie marathons. And it is at times quite an entertaining film where you go, I had fun. Overall, I'm not expecting a grand masterpiece with this film. I'm looking to have fun and maybe get one or two scares, and sometimes that's enough. And while I'd say I enjoyed the 2003 version a bit more, I think this is a great tribute to the ride that families will enjoy. And would I see this film again? Sure, I'd probably see this again. I think it's a fun time. I just think it's not as amazing as it could have been, but it has some good moments that I think are still worth seeing. So that is my review of Haunted Mansion. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, you can hit the like button and subscribe. I'd greatly appreciate it. And you can follow me on Twitter, even though it's called X, but I'm going to keep calling it Twitter. I grew up on it being called Twitter. You know, their mama named them Twitter. I'm going to call them Twitter. So Twitter, Letterboxd, and TikTok at Leading Mohicans. And remember, regardless of what others feel about the things you love, it is always for the agenda. Bye.